so many of these guys learned me being me doesn't work. Whether that was with their moms, whether that was with the girls in the neighborhood, whether that was when they started dating, they made the decision, the same decision I did, that like me being me isn't the ticket here. So let me just try to be whatever they want. And that's how I'll get access to love, relationships, sex, the feminine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Human Experience Podcast. My name is Blake Chalfant. I am the host of the show. Today, we are joined by Traver Boehm. Traver is the author of the books Today I Rise and Man, Uncivilized. He's a two-time TEDx speaker, a men's coach, and the founder of the Uncivilized men's movement. He's helped men all over the world to become uncivilized as they wake up to the power of their hearts, the brilliance of their bodies, and the wisdom of their souls, so they can blaze their own path by uniquely blending both the primal and the divine within them. Traver truly is a special kind of human being. He has gone down the path of having the business that was crushing it, having the wife, living out in California, and feeling like he had checked the box of life. And then it all came crashing down, and he was forced into, or maybe not forced, he was invited in an intense way into his own inner work, in his healing journey. And from that place, he has formed this men's movement, and he is changing the life of so many men. And it's truly an inspiring walk. He shares so much wisdom with us, and just being in his presence is nourishing and healing for me. So I hope you all enjoyed as much as I did. Before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, please do me a favor and yourself a favor. Leave a like, subscribe, share the show with a friend, and give us a rating. It really does help the channel a lot to grow. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Traver Boehm. Traver Boehm, thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Of course. So incredibly excited to get into it today. You've been kind of a part of the family in a weird way. My mom's known you for quite some time. My uncles and my dad have both been to your retreats. I haven't had the pleasure of coming to a retreat yet, but I had the pleasure this past week or so of just fully diving into your work. And man, I mean, I'll say this at the end of the show. I'll say it in the intro of the show. I think your work is absolutely essential for all humans, but especially all men. And so for anyone out there listening, highly encouraging you to stick around because, we've got a lot of terrain to cover, and I think we'll be able to do a good job. So with that, let's dive in. So when you think about your life kind of as like a story, right? And there's these different arcs of the story, kind of take us through the climax of your story, this turning point within your life.
Yeah, there's always an inciting incident, right? If we look at the hero's journey or a story arc, and that's where everything is moving along, quote, as it should, and then something happens and tends to reveal that the moving along as it should perhaps wasn't complete or was going in the wrong direction. And so, Blake, I was a cliche for a good part of my life, and especially a chapter of it where I, quote, had it all, right? I was living in this beautiful part of California. I owned my own business. The business was successful. It was a gym and strength training facility. So it wasn't like I was putting on a shirt and tie and, driving an hour to work. I was showing up in board shorts and no shirt and teaching people how to get strong. I was married to my study partner from grad school. I had a kid on the way, first one. And on the surface, everything was not perfect, but things were good. Right? Like that's a good life. I was surfing a lot. I was around fascinating people. I had a great community in my business. And in very short order, it all fell away. And that's kind of the inciting incident. It started with a miscarriage in the pregnancy. And that was like the pop of the bubble, but I didn't know it. I remember thinking like this is just terrible and it's not what I wanted, and it was a bit of a traumatic experience, but it was the first domino to fall of my marriage quickly ended afterwards. And then within literally 24 hours, I had gone to my business partner's house, and because I was a mess, right? It was like, I think my marriage just ended yesterday. And this wasn't like long drawn out fighting. And, like we both knew it was coming. It was, I woke up one morning, had breakfast with her, and asked, "What are you doing today?" And she said, "I'm moving out in an hour." And I literally thought she was joking. She wasn't joking. And so I'm at my business partner's house being like, "I don't know what's happening. My life is kind of falling apart." And he said something similar to her of, "I'm not sure this is the best idea for you to stay in this business either." And it wasn't attacking. It wasn't, mean. It was just like the best way to say it, Blake, I think that I can explain in totality what was happening is if you put something off and put something off and put something off and put something off and then hit a stop, all of that energy and momentum slams into you. And so I had been out of alignment and out of alignment and out of alignment and out of alignment. And then there was an incident that made everything pause. And then all of that out of alignmentness, for lack of a better word, caught up with me. And so that was the fall. That was when, I remember sitting on the couch the next day thinking, okay, my life has completely fallen apart. And here was the second part of the story. I remember also thinking, thank God the house of cards has fallen. Right. And so intuitively, I also knew I don't think that was the right marriage, even though I fought for it. I don't think this was the business I wanted to stay in. And I perhaps hadn't wanted to be in for a couple of years. And then all of the compensatory ways that I was living, drinking, getting high, looking at a ton of porn, exercising twice a day. I was trying to run 4 businesses at the same time. That's like that life. If I just say that to you, that's insanity. I didn't sleep. My adrenals were shot, right? I was like up all night pacing the halls. I wanted to write. I wanted to speak. I wanted to do other things. I wanted a deeper relationship with my partner. It all hit at the same time. And so that's the point in the story when I have to go through some kind of journey or passageway or transformational experience. But like that popped the bubble. That was the thing that made everything else stop and go, okay, there's going to be a couple ways to go from this point forward. We can pretend that this didn't happen and just carry on with life as usual, right? The advice I got from a lot of my community was, okay, go open the exact same business in the neighboring town. Most of us will come with you. Start dating today. Like you run a gym, you have 300 members here, half of them are women. Most of them will date you. You can be remarried with a kid on the way in, 8 months. Like if you do this right, this is kind of like 6 months of suffering and then you're good. Then you'll be right back here. And so that was one way to go. The other way to go is just to completely collapse and go, okay, this is it. My life's over. I'm done. I'm nothing. I'm just going to wallow in my misery. I'm going to let depression take me over. I'm going to become an addict. I'm going to fall apart completely, which happens to a lot of men. I'm going to kill myself, right? That's a very viable option for a lot of men who have lost everything. Or surrender to this journey and say, okay, this is going to move me in places that I never thought it would, that I never wanted to be, that I didn't know existed, and will open me to ideas, to growth, to transformation, to a radical reorganization of who I am as a human. And then in my particular case, which was unique, who I am as a man. Option A of just rebuild everything quickly and pretend it didn't happen, I had a very gut level instinctual belief that if I did that, I would also be right back where I am now, or then, 3 years after that. and that this felt like an opportunity to not just go, cool, new wife, new business, same neighboring town, but to actually look in the mirror and say, okay, there are parts of my life that I definitely don't like. And there's reasons behind those parts that I've never looked at. And it's time to do all that work. It is a call to consciousness. It is a
Hmm.
call to growth. It is a call to an awakening. Now, I can go through that process. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be so much unknown, uh, and see what's on the other side. And that was the choice that I actually made.
Yeah. Man, it's such a valuable story, and I think so many people on the planet right now are at that crossroads, that kind of that crux in this hero's journey that we all have. You know, do I choose the same comfortable life, or do I choose the uncomfortable path that for whatever reason some place within me knows is where I'm supposed to go? Right. It reminds me of when
Yeah.
Francis Weller talks about that client he had who, is like, why waste a perfectly good heart attack and go exactly back to where we
Mm-hmm.
are? And I see this in so many of my friends and whatnot who are getting in, who constantly are being in the same relationships that fail in the exact same way. They come back to this exact same place within themselves, but there's no context for another way, another road, another path, which I think is exactly why I'm so happy to be here talking with you, and that you're doing the work that you do and that I do the work that I do, is because we haven't been given a context for
Right.
navigating those moments that we all are going through. And we haven't been given a roadmap to say, okay, if this isn't the path, continually going back to the same place that I've tried over and over, we don't have a roadmap for the other way, the other path.
Mm.
Um, and so I want to start breaking down the framework that you have created. I do want to first ask you, because I know your story. Where did you go at that point? I know you dove into quite a few different modalities and experiences. Tell us a little bit about that.
Certainly. The very first thing I did was go to therapy. So I'll just put that as like step one. I realized that, quite humbling, that I was the center point of these relationships that weren't working, right? Like my business partner and my ex-wife weren't in cahoots, and they're not like now married with kids themselves to each other. Like this was two separate people who were basically saying the same thing. This relationship doesn't work. Who you are as a person isn't showing up in the ways that would make it work. So I went to therapy. And it was very eye opening. I'd been to therapy before, so it wasn't like this was some grand revelation. But I started working with a Jungian therapist who I just randomly got introduced to, Blake. So it wasn't like I sought out a Jungian therapist. I went to another therapist and it was awful. I thought I had a terrible experience, and then on a whim, a friend said, "Hey, I think you should check this guy out. He's a surfer. He's interesting. He's like you. Like, go with him." And he was the one who introduced me to the hero's journey. He's the one who introduced me to the idea of the subconscious and the unconscious, and would have me write down my dreams and draw pictures of what I was feeling, which was completely against my upbringing, or like was just unknown in my upbringing, right? I was raised by an attorney who was also an engineer. Wake up and draw your dreams was not like my household norm. So I did that. And then created a really unique year-long project called the Year to Live Project, where I knew I had space. I knew I wanted space. I had money coming in from a sale of a business. So I had this giant opportunity that was staring me in the face, which was, go, get out of here. Go seek your life. Go experience life. Like do like Anthony Bourdain says, like go eat with the people. Go get out of your comfort zone. Go sleep on floors. Go, travel a bit. And I created a theme, and I went all in on this theme, and that was, what would I do if this was my last year alive? Because it felt like that frame would both give me the option and opportunity to go make amends and heal past relationships and work through stuff that I didn't work through previously, and then also set myself up, because I had a pretty good idea I wasn't going to die at the end of the year, or at least I hope not, that it was also an opportunity to learn things that I would then get to carry for the rest of my life. And so it was this kind of juxtaposition of, I volunteered in hospice. I did a month in a outdoor survival school. I did a month in a yoga of leadership course. I spent a month in a dark retreat. I connected with ex-girlfriends who I had to clean some stuff up with. I connected with my family who I had to clean some stuff up with. So it was this very, very cleansing, reorganizing, opening year, with the frame of, I had read this book called A Year to Live by Stefan Levine. And it talked about all the preparation that you'll want to do before you leave this earth. And I thought, well, cool. Why do I want to do that at 82 when I have cancer? Why don't I do it at 40 and then see what the next 42 years look like, having already done that work in the middle? Which seemed like a profound thought to me, right? Of like, why wait? Why not do it now? I have the space, I have the time, I have the financial means to do it. So it was a very, very unique journey of like completely leaving home, putting all my stuff in storage, going to foreign countries, doing these experiences, meeting all these people. It was awful and amazing because my heart was so broken. But it really solidified a number of teachings and lessons and ideas that I still teach and share today. Right. And I still live by today. My life is so radically different, Blake, than it was, in 2016 when this all happened. It's so radically different in so many positive ways. Right. How I exist in the world, how my relationships exist, what I do for a living, my sex life, how I make money, what I speak about, what I feel, how my body feels, all of it. It was a complete like Control Alt Delete. And I'm not recommending everybody walk out of their lives and do that. If the opening's there and you want to take it, do it. But now I've returned to a place of teaching people, how do you do this without blowing your life up? Or how do you do this before your life blows up and offers you the opportunity where you don't have much choice, right? Yeah. Which is most people's
Right.
coming to Jesus moment is when you wake up on rock bottom. So that feels like a little bit of a long answer to a short question, but yeah, I went on quite a journey, and I'm still on the same, a different version of the journey, but essentially the same journey.
Yeah. It really is kind of the story of the classic midlife crisis, right? 40 years old. So I'm curious, like looking back on it now in hindsight, what is your advice to, young men, early 20s, so they don't have to go through this, 15, 20-year marriage cycle just to wake up one day at rock bottom? Like, how do we start that work now?
It's a really challenging question to answer, because I think on some level that initiation is necessary, right? So it's sort of like saying to people, how do you realize that money isn't everything before you have money and realize that you're still miserable? You almost have to go through the experience of it to recognize it at its depth. But that being said, I don't want your listeners to just be like, "Ah, fuck, okay, cool. I'm just going to live till 35 or 40 and then wait for everything to fall apart." What you do is you get really honest and you get really sober. And I'm not talking about like everybody needs to run to AA, but the very first thing I did was get sober and say, "Hey, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm not going to plug into this paradigm that, one, keeps me numb, and two, rationalizes how my life is unconscious." So for young guys, it's one of the most powerful things a man can do, is not buy into the lie that is alcohol and everything that comes with it. The money wasted, the time wasted, the unconscious conversations, the DUIs, the fights, whatever it is, just take yourself out of that equation and then see how the universe fills that vacuum. What does it do? What are you
Mm.
doing with your life for your life? If, my life was, I wasn't an alcoholic by any means, but I could probably count 1,000 days in my, or more in my 20s and 30s that I just wasted, like in a bar, getting drunk on a holiday, like literally wasted, as opposed to engaging with life in a meaningful way. So for young guys, the question for me is always like, what do you want to do with this really unique time? You may not have a lot of money because you don't have the experience to earn it yet, and that's okay. But what you have is exuberance. What you have is a call to adventure. What you have is the willingness to sleep on people's floors and go to hostels and live on the cheap and, be uncomfortable and live an adventure. And I think what's important in those experiences isn't just to do them to check the boxes. It's to actually feel, this is how people live. This is what my life feels like when I am meeting strangers and having to navigate difficult situations and live outside of my comfort zone, experience different cultures, see that perhaps the box in the neighborhood and the city and the town and the country that I grew up in isn't all that it's meant. It's all the way, what's the best way to say it? It's not all it's cracked up to be, right? Wow, I go to this other country and they quote have nothing, but they all seem a lot happier. Wow, I'm
Mm-hmm.
outside teaching kids how to scuba dive rather than be inside crunching numbers on an Excel spreadsheet as an intern for JP Morgan. Like there's more to life than the track that most of us got indoctrinated into. And so I think that's what, to answer
Yeah.
your question, Blake, now that I've spoken it out loud, is get off the track, right? I followed the track. I went to school. I came out of school. I got a job. After that job, I went to grad school. After grad school, I got married, had the kid. I was off on a couple things of following a bit more of my own path, but at no point did I ever question it enough to say, hey, I don't really want to go to college. I want to go travel. I want to experience the world. I want to be a surf bum or a dive bum or a ski bum, or not even using the word bum on all three. I just want to pursue a business that's possible now. I'm a little bit older, so it wasn't quite as possible without the internet. But now you can literally do whatever you want. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to take away the initiation that often comes in your 30s and 40s, but I'll tell you younger guys what it does. That initiation takes men off of an unconscious path and puts them onto a conscious path where they both can start to feel their hearts, claim their power, and have just the beginning of a relationship with a word that we'll call the soul, with their own
Mm.
soul. This takes
Yeah.
time. This takes contemplation. This takes stillness that may not be available I remember in my 20s, I was running around like a crazy person because I had so much damn energy. Someone was like, "Hey, how's your heart and soul?" Like, I don't know. I'm running a marathon this weekend, surfing all weekend, all week. I'm lifting twice a day because I have all of the. I'm trying to train to fight professionally. Like, there's energy in you, but yeah, I'll stop it. I'll say it again. That initiation in your 30s and 40s, and I say this to a lot of men. I know what's happening to you. You're 38 years old. You're in like a mid position in your company. You have two kids, and you're getting this little itch that you're unhappy. You've been unhappy for a long time, but that's been part of the gig that you signed up for. You're supposed to be unhappy, right? You're grinding, you're putting the hours in, you're about to make partner. And now you're realizing though, you don't even want to be partner. But now you've hit this collision of 15 years of nights and weekends and investing, and kids are in private school. And now all of a sudden this thing in your chest starts throbbing and going, you know what? I think I may want to be a school teacher. I think I may want to do something completely different. I think I want to go back to art. I think I want to do something that makes me feel alive, doesn't just make me money. And that is a very precarious
Mm.
place, Blake, for a lot of men for good reason. I'm not going to tell them like, cool,
Yeah.
yank the kids out of private school, tell that, sell the house and go live in a studio apartment with your whole family so that you can pursue your new art career. But that being said, if you ignore the heart whispers long enough, they'll burn your fucking house down. Right.
Totally.
I have a good
Yeah.
buddy, Asher Packman in Australia, who says that the universe speaks to us with a feather, a brick, and a freight train. And like you get to pick which one you're gonna hear. And I think most of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
when the freight train comes and we're like, man, I had no idea this was coming, with some honest dialogue, you're like, oh, I do remember the brick. I remember 3 bricks, and I remember thoroughly
Yeah.
ignoring the feathers. But now here I am splatted on the sidewalk with no choice but to listen.
Yeah. Wow, I love that, man. Such good advice. I mean, I think the overarching theme of what you're sharing is like shake things up. You know,
Yeah.
experiment with getting off the tracks and just seeing what happens. How do you feel? What do you notice? Right?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, it's like, especially as we're younger, we don't know until we know. We don't know that we were missing all these pieces of life and experiences until the freight train comes. We're like, holy shit, how did I not
Sure.
see that? Right? And so
Sure.
it's like, how do we have these moments of experiencing something different where then we realize that, oh, wow, I realized I was in a rut. I was cutting myself off from a huge part of life. And so one thing I just want to mention is like for anyone listening that is hearing you speaking, like there's a very clear aliveness as you're speaking, as you're sharing, and there's a very clear like sense of connection that you are very connected with yourself. And so what I want to say to that is like that those qualities, those are not reserved for certain people. Like those qualities of feeling aliveness in our life, feeling connected to our life, that is the birthright of being alive, of being a human being. And so, people might hear you speak and say, oh, well, that's just for certain people. That kind of life experience is only for him or whatever. It's like, it's just because he's found his thing. It's like, no, that's for everyone. So if you're listening, you can tell that like, oh, there's something different about this guy that I'm not used to. It's like, that's a good sign. That's a feather right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece that I want to catch is what you were speaking to about alcohol, which I haven't actually ever quite articulated in that way, but it's so true. Like it's such this glue of social dynamics for people right now. And even if you're someone who's like, oh, I don't have an alcohol problem, I just enjoy going out and getting hammered a couple nights a week with my friends. It's like, do it as an experiment, man. Like take away alcohol for a month and just see what happens. I think it will free up so much space, and you'll realize that there's probably a lot of relationships and of your just social life that was kind of built on that. So I think it's a great experiment for anyone to try, really.
For sure.
So let's transition going a bit deeper into your kind of frameworks that you use. I think something that I appreciate your work so much, I'm very connected to a lot of different men's work teachings and things like that. But I think what you hold down that is so important is this concept of like integration, of being an integrated man. And, I think there's some organizations that are more around the primal or more around the sacred, and like the way that you tie them together is so important. And so I'll let you kind of take me where you want to go, but let's break down the Marlboro Man and the nice guy.
Sure. I think first we need to talk, Blake, about protective strategies. And both of these archetypes are protective strategies. And for people listening to this, our number one safety mechanism in a culture is doing what we need to do to belong. Like that is base level. That is like you burn your hand on a stove, you pull your hand away. It would take a lot of, I don't even know if it'd be possible to train your body to not pull your hand away when it got burned, right? That's just human nature. What's also human nature is to do what we have to do to belong, because there's a part of our brain that says, if I don't belong here, I will go live in the woods, freeze, starve, and die. And that's legit. And I don't care if you're 50 listening to this or 22 listening to this, like that's in our system. So the Marlboro Man and the nice guy are two adaptive strategies. The Marlboro Man, it's an adaptive strategy that's also been taught to us. So we should also say for all humans listening, but especially men, we learn by modeling. We learn by what we see. So I grew up with a Marlboro Man father. Why was he that way? Because his father was on the beaches of Normandy and then lived through the Depression. This was not a guy who at any point in his life there was a big opening for his feelings. Nobody cared how he felt when they had to go fight Germans and watch thousands of men get obliterated on a beach. They didn't stop like 200 yards off the beach and be like, hey guys, okay, who's scared? Okay, Bob, you're scared. Cool, you can get out. Stuart, you're upset. Okay, you can leave too. It was like nobody fucking cares. Go kill. That was my grandfather who raised my dad at a time when also there was a job that needed to get done. Emotions were irrelevant. Just do what has to be done. And so I was then raised to learn emotions are weakness. Weakness means you don't belong. Feelings are trouble. Anything that's, quote, feminine is bad. Why? Because that's weak, right? Look at you, you little girl. Like how many of us grew up at some point hearing these things? Don't be a pussy. Be a man. Man up. You got that's the Marlboro Man archetype. The Marlboro Man archetype is antagonistic and aggressive towards connection. Hear that again. That means that archetype views connection with people, with nature, with rhythms, with the feminine, with his heart, with feelings as a danger. That makes sense? Like that will get that guy sent out to the woods to freeze, starve, and die. That's what his system believes. So, of course, it's a protective strategy. How do I keep myself alive? I don't feel. Feelings are bad. Feelings are weak. Feelings lead to trouble. Feelings lead to people making fun of me or assaulting me. I'll give you something to cry about, right? How many of us grew up? I grew up hearing that. So there's this archetype of the man who thinks, I have no needs. I'm completely independent. I can rely on nobody or else I'll get betrayed. I'll get hurt. I'll get left. I'll be abandoned. The only way to make sure that never happens is to never connect with anybody. It's the stoic, the lone wolf, even the image, right, of the man out there on the prairie by himself with his cigarette and his hat and his horse. Like, that's very non-relational. But I want to give it a little credit, right? That's a powerful man, in quotes. It's a man who can get shit done. That's a man who can deal with the resilience and the grind necessary to perhaps do something. He's independent. So we don't want to just completely negate the archetype. Now let's swing all the way over to the other side, the nice guy archetype. That is a guy who is all about connection. He knows he can't do it on his own. He needs people, but he needs mostly the feminine. He needs women. He needs to be affirmed by women. He is antagonistic and aggressive towards his own independence and his own sense of power. That makes sense? This is a guy that's all about heart, connection, love, but he's also terrified of his own masculinity. He's terrified of his own ability to stand up in the world and say, hey, this is why I'm here and this is what I'm going to do. This is a guy who's unwilling, Blake, to take a risk. This is the guy that is super needy. He's got three main, I call them the 3 C's. He's either super clingy. The only way for him to get his needs met is to like latch on to other people and can sort of extract from them. So he's super clingy. He's got no independence. He's got no sense of power. He can't find his balls. The Marlboro Man can't find his heart. This man can't find his balls. So he's clingy. Or he's collapsed. This is the dude living in his parents' basement, getting high, playing video games, looking at porn all day. Who, if you're like, hey, why are you here? What do you want to do? Nothing. I don't know. Like, do you not want to be of service in the world? Do you not want to help people? Do you not want to build something? Like, well, that sounds terrifying. Yeah. And lastly, this is a man who's overcompensating by taking care of everybody else around him in a dishonest way of hopes of getting his own needs taken care of by them. It's covert. If I take care of you, I know secretly you'll take care of me, but we don't have that reciprocal agreement. Does that make
Mm.
sense? The difference of the two archetypes, right? So, but then let's also
Yeah,
say the
yeah.
positives of the nice guy. He's very empathetic. He's very kind. He's compassionate. He feels other people. He does have a sense of his emotions. The challenge is he gets enmeshed with them. They're
Mm.
bigger than he is. He doesn't know how to say, hey, I got a job to do right now. I need to put this to the side and get it done. Where the Marlboro Man doesn't have the ability to put the job aside and say, hey, this relationship, this connection, this human in front of me is going to take precedence right now. And so those are two very common male archetypes. The Marlboro Man is viewed as more primal. The nice guy is viewed as more, quote, in my languaging, divine. Right? He's also sort of your spiritual, for lack of a better term, spiritually bypassing fuckboy. He's a guy just like wandering from festival to festival, like sleeping with everybody, but I don't have any commitment. And I don't know. Let's see what I'm called to do today. He usually also has like some financial backing, like someone's paying for the air flights, Um,
Yeah.
so I think most guys can identify with a little bit of each. There's definitely people who are like all that one archetype or all the other archetype. But I
Mm-hmm.
say to a lot of guys, like, hey, you have some nice guy in you, you still need to work out. And I personally have both. Like, I have some Marlboro Man I need to work out. My dad was a stoic. My dad was an engineer. My dad was, I said, an attorney. He didn't need anything from anybody. I became
Mm-hmm.
super needy, but then didn't know how to receive help because I never watched that happen. So
Mm.
there's a spectrum with both of these. I have found, and I know
Yeah.
I've branded it as uncivilized, that when a man has access to both sides, he knows how to be in relationship. He knows how to create connection. He knows how to find his heart. He knows how to express himself through his heart. And he has the ability to put a fucking stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm building. This is what I'm doing with my life. This is the path I'm going to walk. And yes, just by putting a stake in the ground, you're going to upset some people. And that's okay. I don't have to make everybody like me and love me for me to be okay in the world.
Mm.
That's what
Mm-hmm.
I see so much of these days.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple things that I want to catch and get a bit more clarity on. One, we absolutely need both of these, right? But to unpack the Marlboro Man a bit more, you mentioned that he's kind of like the lone wolf that doesn't have friends.
Mhm.
What I think we would both agree on is like the Marlboro Man maybe is like the guy at the bar with his friends getting fucked up and watching sports or something like that. And so it's not necessarily that the Marlboro Man doesn't hang out with anyone, but I think there's like an interesting difference between like being around other people and then actually deep connections, right?
For
And
sure.
that's like the piece that the Marlboro Man doesn't have, right?
Yeah. What they both don't have, Blake, is this. If you knew me deeply, you'd still want to be around me. They're both missing that piece, but they're missing it in different flavors. The Marlboro Man is I will be aloof and removed. So yeah, I'll be sitting at the bar. I'll probably be cracking the jokes. I'll be watching the TV with you. I'll be high-fiving, when the Giants score. But I'm more removed. Right? Now the nice
Mm-hmm.
guy is the one running back and forth to the bar, buying everybody rounds, hoping everybody likes him, knowing the most stats about the game. But if you take both guys and put them in the middle of the room and say, "Cool, tell me something that's true about you." Or answer this question. If you really knew me, you'd know X. And both of them would be absolutely terrified. Does
Mm.
the difference make sense there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was good clarity for me. Um, Something that I've noticed within some of my friends, and I know that both of these different archetypes are like a defense mechanism, right? And actually, here's something I'm curious about. Would you say that, like, if you're the Marlboro Man, then there's probably a good chance that you've been wounded by like the kind of nice guy side of the spectrum? And like, kind of, for me, I think about a lot of nice guys who seem to have been kind of like have wounding around the kind of like more primal masculine side, and so then they kind
Mhm.
of polarize to the other side. Would you agree with that?
Here's my take on it: is quite often the Marlboro Man has been wounded by the feminine, and so he is completely antagonistic towards the feminine. The nice guy has often been wounded by the masculine, and so he runs straight to the feminine. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Yeah.
there's definitely can be crossover. I don't want to just undo what I just said. Like there's obviously individual cases for all of it. Or it's the guy who just modeled, right? Like my dad was a stoic, my grandfather was a stoic. This is what men in my house do. I've been indoctrinated into that idea. And then the nice guy is this is what I want to be a good boy for mommy. Pleasing mommy is everything. Mommy was the loud one. Mommy was the one who doted on me, etc. Then he models himself into the nice guy paradigm. But at the deepest core,
Mm-hmm.
for both of them, it's a protection mechanism against abandonment.
Yeah.
The Marlboro Man has already left. He was never there. So how can you abandon him? Right? You can't even get close to him. In order to leave him, you have to get close to him. With the nice guy, you can't abandon him because he's got his arms wrapped around you and his legs wrapped around you, and he's driving you to the airport and helping you move your apartment and buying you groceries and constantly meeting your needs. So he's not even there either, but he's all over you. He's making
Mm-hmm.
himself. You can't. You just need him. Constantly need him. Right? He's irreplaceable, but
Yeah.
that's not how humans make connections. Like you said at the bar, like where's
Mm-hmm.
the deep connection on either one of them? It's not there because the fear is if you get to know me, you will leave me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the really important piece for me understanding the nice guy is like it's putting on a front of being kind and nice and complimenting and like trying to get someone to like me, but it's a front. And I think for me, I kind of resonate more with the nice guy in my own story, and a lot of the young men that I kind of work with fall into that category. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like for a lot of people who maybe have had a problem, a struggle in the past with connecting with women, finding relationships, like that the
Mm-hmm.
nice guy is a really good like kind of strategy to fall back on. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, none of this shit is working. It's not working. Okay, maybe I just need to be nice in all these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's dive into the nice guy in relationship.
Sure. You
Yeah.
know, Blake, I when I've run a course called Kill the Nice Guy, and the very first call, I told the guys a story of being, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. And, it's at that age, relationships come and go pretty quick. So within the span of like 2 months, two girls that I was interested in weren't interested in me, but were interested in more of like the older kind of bad boy type guys. And I remember thinking, I don't have what women are interested in. I don't know what it is, this mystical, magical thing. Like I just whatever the character trait is that makes a man attractive, I don't have it. Fuck. Shit. I didn't get born with it. So what is the strategy then? Join them. Hang out with them. Become their best friend. Become one of the quote girls. I'm around them. At some point, they're going to have to bump into me and notice me and realize, like, wow, you're a really great guy. You've been here this whole time. Maybe we'll date you, or maybe we'll sleep with you. Maybe you'll get what you actually want, but there is no, the way you were going about it before, it just wasn't going to work. And so I remember like consciously having that thought. And so I tell guys this because it becomes a strategy. If it worked the normal way, you wouldn't need this strategy. So you're 100% right. A lot of guys find that women are intimidating or they're just not good with women. I genuinely find, Blake, I've worked with so many nice guys. Like I love that community because I am a recovering nice guy. And so many of these guys learned me being me doesn't work. Whether that was with their moms, whether that was with the girls in the neighborhood, whether that was when they started dating, they made the decision, the same decision I did, that like me being me isn't the ticket here. So let me just try to be whatever they want. And that's how I'll get access to love, relationships, sex, the feminine, right? And what's so hard for men specifically is we don't really come into our power. We don't really come into like what's really deeply attractive about us. Most of us don't until a little bit later in life. But you can't tell the 11-year-old who has a crush on the girl down the street right now, hey man, don't worry. When you're 26, you're going to be jacked, right? You're going to have a really good job. You'll have the car, like your hair is going to have grown in. You'll be done with the acne and the braces and everything's going to be awesome. And that dude's going to be like, I have to live my entire life. Like I want Susie Johnson to like me now. You know, I'm not
Uh-huh.
waiting 15 years. Does that make sense?
You're good. Yeah, for sure. And I'm recovering nice guy as well, and I really resonate that with like at a young age starting to see that, and we see it in the movies too, right? This is what the girls want, right? They want these men that are very, I mean, and I don't even know what the right word is. You said who have come into their power. There's a certain level of confidence, the way that they walk, the way that they hold themselves. That I clearly was like, I don't have that. And more than even a word, that it's more of like a place within myself that I can feel, that I can still feel today, that I'm trying to, tap into more, lead from that place more. Maybe it's tapping into my power. Maybe it's more of, like that animal within me. I don't know what you'd want to call it, but I think there's a really deep fear for a lot of people around touching that place within ourselves to actually lead in a relationship, to, to lead from our power. There seems like there's a deep fear within that.
It's two things. First of all, we also need to just acknowledge that boys develop more slowly later than women do, than girls do. So emotionally, physically, etc., we're about 2 to 3 years behind. So if you take a 14-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy and he has a crush on her, he's essentially an 11 or 12-year-old. And so there's this like mismatch from the start. It evens out in our 20s. But most of us get interested in the opposite sex, not in our 20s. So we do at a time when the girls and women we want to be around and perhaps connect with are literally years ahead of us. And so this gets instilled often pretty early. Like, oh, I'm not interesting. I don't have the thing. And whether it's confidence or power or sense of self or whatever it is that is making that person attracted to you or not, it's kind of a rigged game at the beginning, and that's just, it's
Mm-hmm.
just hard. You can't explain that rationally to a guy who's heartbroken because, his crush doesn't like him back. And that pain is often so overwhelming for him. And it's overwhelming at any age, but it's very, very acute and big at a young age where he now has to like pull in some compensatory or survival strategies just to get through heartbreak. I'm 48 years old. Heartbreak sucks at 48. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
but I have tools and skills and a friend group and resources and a little bit of life experience. And I know that this will pass. And, I've got 7 relationships behind me where I felt the same way at the end of every relationship. And I know that in 6 months, this will change it. But at 14, I was just devastated that the girl I liked so much wanted to go out with a guy who was 2 years older than me and wore a jean jacket, and had half the side of his head shaved, and like his voice was deeper, and he'd gone through puberty. And I was like, what do I do? There's nothing I can do here except pull in a strategy that said, oh, I have an older sister and she has lots of girlfriends. What if I just get them to let me hang out with them? Oh, they think I'm cute. Like, they don't see me as a man. They see me as like a
Mm-hmm.
cute little boy, but I get limited access to them, which is better than no access. Now that's a
Yeah.
personal story, but I think a lot of guys can relate to that. I wasn't a threat. I wasn't considered. They didn't see me as a viable option of anything. So I got to be around. So what did I learn? Don't be a threat. Don't ask for anything. Don't want to have relationship. Just be willing to hang out next to them, and you'll get some of your needs met, and this awful feeling of rejection won't happen. There's no
Mm.
risk on my part, right? This is what I say to guys all the time who are interested in a woman. I don't care what age you're at. It's like, does she know that you're interested in her relationally? Have you walked up? Like, my current relationship, it was 4 years ago yesterday. I sat down with my partner and said, here's the deal. I'm really interested in pursuing a relationship with you. I'm not here. I don't just want to sleep with you. I don't want to just casually date you. Like, I want a relationship with you. That's a risk, because she could have said, I really don't want that. Have a great life. But what I didn't want to do is say, hey, I don't know, you want to just like hang out and watch TV? No risk. When what I wanted was
Mm-hmm.
this thing, I had to say it and then be willing to take the risk of rejection. Now
Yeah.
that's what nice guys are hedging their bets against, Blake. No risk of rejection. Like, how do I go through my whole life without risk of rejection? I never
Mm.
put a stake in the ground. I never say what I want. I never say, "Hey, I really like you. Do you like me back?" "Hey, I really want this." Even from life. "Hey, life, I want to be a lawyer." "Hey, life, I want to try surfing." "Hey, life, I want to move to a foreign country." No risk if you don't do that stuff. And yet, is
Yeah.
it the core of masculinity, the core of being a man, taking risks, going the path that you want to go, living the life that you want to live, having the relationships that you want to have, the depth that you want to go to? I think that's in every man, which is why we see so much collapse right now, because men aren't willing to take that risk, because I can get 70% of my sexual needs met through porn. I can get 70% of my fitness needs met through Instagram. I can get my connection needs met through WhatsApp, right? I don't need to actually get my hands dirty and get out in the world and say, man, I just got my ass kicked by life. Which, when you're taking risks, like, you've traveled abroad, you've written a book, right? Like, you've left a standard cultural system. It's risky. Right?
Mm.
There's people who will look you right in the eye and say, like, you're doing it wrong. You're fucking up by doing this. Go back to the standard track. And you got to be
Yeah.
willing to deal with them too.
Right. It feels like what you're really speaking to is I know myself and I'm willing to take action on that, right? And I'm not going to let anyone stop me from that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like this, I know that this is what I'm deeply called to, what I deeply want, and I'm going to do that. And that level of like knowing yourself and then taking action on it, that is magnetic. Like that is
Mhm.
what people are attracted to. People are not attracted to like me sacrificing what I deeply want just to be nice to you and hopefully get your approval. Like that's
Right.
not magnetic at all.
Mm-mm.
As you were speaking, I could feel this like sensation of just the bars of the cage. Like I could just feel like, it feels like we're in a cage, it within the nice guy archetype. And something really stuck out when you said the word threat, right?
Mm.
And I know what you mean because I know your work. But let's go a little deeper into there. It's like the word threat, the word being a risk, and then this quote that you use that's be dangerous but not a danger.
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah,
explain
man.
that for us and why that's important?
Yeah, it's an ethos tenet that we have at Uncivilized, which I think is profound and speaks to the core of what the new iteration of men will embody. There's a difference between being a danger, which means I don't know who I am, I don't know my triggers, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, reactionary as I can be. I don't know what I want out of life, so I'm stressed out of my mind because I'm just going with the flow. But I'm also in a male body, which means I have a shitload of testosterone. I'm bigger, faster, and stronger than most of the planet. That's just by biological fact. So there's a difference between being dangerous, which to me means I know who I am, I know what I want, I know what I'm about, I'm potent. But I've also done the work. I'm not part of the problem. I'm not going to
Mm.
wake up one morning after too many beers and see a bunch of holes punched in my wall and not know how it happened. That will never happen with me, ever. I'm still human, but I'm not going to be part of the problem. I'm actually going to be part of the solution to the problem without being more of the problem itself. So a lot of guys read that ethos tenet, be dangerous but not a danger, and think it's immediately about like, cool, I need to go to the gun range, practice shooting. I need to go to Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and make sure that I'm dangerous. I need to be able to lift weights. Cool. If that's what you want to do that. But I know a lot of guys who know how to shoot, know how to throw a punch, and know how to choke people, and they're a danger because they don't know themselves. They don't know what sets them off. They don't know what upsets them. They're not allowed to say it. They haven't given themselves permission to actually put language around their emotion. They don't know how to say, I'm really angry right now. Please give me 5 minutes to go outside and cool off and come back. Instead, they just go, gosh, I have no idea what happened, but now there's a hole punched in the wall. And now if we take it out of perhaps that frame and make it a little bit bigger, I know when I read propaganda, Blake, I'm dangerous to the system because I can see the flaws in the system. I'm not part of the system. I'm not engulfed by the system. Right? Like I can look at our political system and go, man, that is a shit show. I can see the ties between the FDA and big pharma and big tech, and that makes me dangerous to the system. Now, I'm not going to go lie on the rooftop of a building and take a shot at Trump because that just makes me a danger. I'm not out of control of my emotion. I feel my emotion. I'm part of the
Mm.
solution without being part of the problem. Now, what antagonizes most men? What makes us feel agitated? What makes us feel irritable? What makes us uncomfortable is not knowing who the fuck we are and not knowing what we're here to do. We are the doing species. We do things. We do. We build things with our hands, with our minds. We build, we build, we build. Women create life. We build on the outside. And so you take a guy who doesn't know what he's about, doesn't know what he wants, doesn't know why he's here, doesn't know how to be of service, doesn't know how to create relationship. All of that is risk. And I guarantee you that guy is a danger. He's a powder keg waiting to go off at some point. And that some point is usually just life bringing shit to him that's normal life. Not all relationships last forever. Not all jobs last forever. You will have tough financial times. You will have family shit that comes up. You will have people who don't like you. You will have traffic accidents. You will have injuries. Like, life's going to do its thing. Now think of the two different men who I can describe as guy number one, who has normal life, doing what normal life does, and has those incidents come up. He knows who he is. He knows what he's about. He knows what he's building. He's got community around him. He understands his inner world. That's guy A. Guy B doesn't have any of that. His coping strategies are alcohol, marijuana, porn, sex, exercise, and anger. Both of those guys leave their houses in their cars. Both of them get cut off in traffic a mile away. Who's a danger? Right? And this is just a quick and dirty example. But not only is that guy who gets cut off a danger to the public, who's a danger to himself? Right? Who's a danger to his family? A man who has a deep, deep understanding of his sexuality, of his wants and desires in that realm. Because we don't talk a lot about sex with men. That's a big deal. How do we inflict the most damage onto a culture? As men, we often do it sexually. Through sexual abuse, through family sexual abuse, through rape, through all of these different ways. Manipulation, coercion, all of the things. We do so much damage. Now you take a guy who knows his sexuality, knows his needs, knows his wants, knows how to have conversations, knows how to handle and deal with rejection. Because guess what? I'm pretty sure there's some like famous, really good looking dudes who have also gotten divorced and rejected. Even though we've seen them on the cover of movie posters and like, that guy just has panties flying at him at all times. Still has to deal with rejection at some point. When are men most dangerous, or mostly a danger? When they've been rejected. Yeah. Like when I lived in New York, I was dating at the time, and remember getting into conversations with a lot of women on apps, and I was just starting this work, and I'd be like, send me a screenshot of what happened in like the top 3, if you have it, like shitty conversations with guys on dating apps. And I would just start getting these texted to me constantly. And it was like, hey, I'd love to take you out at Thursday at 5, right? In a message. And then like 20 minutes later, after no response, fuck you, you dumb bitch. I can't believe you didn't reply. Like 20 minutes later, like, I think you should die. And I was like, bro, first of all, like, give the woman a chance to go to the bathroom and get some lunch before replying. But like, you just went from, hey, I want to date you, to, hey, I think you're you're an awful person and should die in 20 minutes. And that wasn't even rejection, where I was also seeing like, hey, thank you for last night. I just don't think we're a great match. Best of luck with your search. And I was like, you fucking bitch. I never liked you. You were fat, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, go to therapy. You are a danger. Does that make sense? I feel like I've gotten a little long-winded, but you said something, Blake, a few minutes ago. It's about knowing yourself. You know yourself in a culture like ours, in a society like ours, that's that unconscious. I'll tell you, man, you're dangerous. You're not market easy. It's not easy to market to. It's not easy to lie to you. It's not easy to have the civilized veil pulled in front of your eyes. You're dangerous. And you're potent. You can build things. You can change things. You can go out in society and make a difference. But you're not a danger. You're safe to be around. Right? That's a big deal and a big difference.
Yeah. So important, man. So a couple of last pieces here as we're wrapping it up.
Sure.
For all the nice guys listening, you say something in your book, the needier that you are, the more that you repel women. And I know that when you say this, you're not saying that you just shouldn't have needs and that you shouldn't speak up for your needs. but there's a difference between having needs and being needy.
Mm-hmm.
And so could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. All of us have needs. I have needs. You have needs. If you're human, you have needs. Now, the nice guy frame is I don't have needs. Because trying to get them met has only left me with devastation and rejection in a young age. Right? Like the image is of like a baby reaching for its mother and its mother walking away. That's so painful to the nice guy that the only way for him to survive is to make the decision, I don't have needs. Now, that's not true. It's just not a fact. We speak to the logic in men here. If you are human, you have needs. Now, there's two ways to go about getting needs met. One, I want to resource myself as best as I can. So my need for attention, affection, love, connection, food, water, money, all the things, I want to be able to get about 80% of those met on my own. I have agency here. I have sovereignty to go do that. But there's some things that you just don't get met on your own. I'm not one of those people that's like, you should give 100% of your needs met all the time by yourself, and then your relationship's just a choice. No, I need my partner. I need Dave I need my team. I need Dewey and Michael. I need my friends. I've reached out to my friends this week. Be like, hey guys, I really need to talk to you. But do you see what I did? I reached out to them and said, hey guys, I really need to talk to you. It's very different than me like sending them 10 memes or passive aggressively sending a message of like, hey, sure would be nice if someone reached out to me. Right?
Yeah.
Or if they found out that I was only friends with them years later because I wanted something that I didn't explicitly say. That's needy. I'll give you an example from my marriage as opposed to my current relationship. In my marriage, I would go like lie on my ex-wife's lap shirtless and like wiggle my back or like take her hand and put it on my back and be like, sure would be nice if I got a massage, right? Gross, nice guy. And it wasn't like doing that once playfully is very different than like that was the pattern. Or I go upstairs right now and be like, Katie, my shoulder's jacked from jujitsu. Would you mind giving me a 15-minute massage? Right? In the first one, there's no stake in the ground. There's no risk. If she laughs it off, I could be like, haha, just kidding. In the second one, if she's like, no, I'm busy, I have to go, okay, cool, thanks. I asked, right? That's the difference. And it's also, Blake, I don't want to get weird, but it is an energetic difference. You can feel neediness. You can feel when people aren't comfortable in their own skin. You can feel when people don't know how to resource themselves. And so they're not coming to you with a clean exchange. Hey, I ask, hey, you give.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us. For anyone who wants to dive more into your work, who wants to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. People can find me at manuncivilized.com. Like, get a hold of the book, first of all. Like, get a hold of this. Read this. Male or female, read that book. You can also find me at Instagram or on Instagram at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm. You can find me on the Uncivilized podcast. I just interviewed Blake a couple days ago. But basically, if you look up Uncivilized anywhere in the world, I'm there. I also have a workshop in September here in Denver for nice guys. So live in person, I've made it super cheap, super affordable. So check out manuncivilized.com/events and you'll see the Kill the Nice Guy workshop here in Denver. Thanks for having me on.